Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. I'm Shira Lotzar, happy to be joined today by my colleague, Alki Thompson, who is off video for some reason. We'd love to see you, Alki, if you can join us, but that's okay if you can't. Vern Schellinger is on vacation, so happy belated 4th of July. We are delighted you could make it this Friday morning. And yeah, we are excited to answer your job search questions. So for those who are new, the way we work this is it's an open Q&A. So me and Alki are going to do our very best to address whatever job search questions are on your heart and mind. I'll typically lead off and Alki will join in. And in the future, you hopefully will see Vern again and he does the same. So anybody would like to share a top of mind job search question, we are happy to help. No questions too big or small.
Christine. Good morning, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, Sharon, and we've been through my resume and gone through it, but one of the things that's come up as I'm applying for jobs is they're asking for strong interpersonal skills and I know those are softer skills. So I'm trying to, what's the best, and I know that they're very general, I feel like I'm saying,
I know, right.
right.
Please be organized and great with people and
Right.
all that.
And even if, the work could lead you to think that in order to accomplish those accomplishments, you had to have it's still. So how do you address really needs to have strong interpersonal skills, be able to,
Right, yada,
the
yada,
nine
yada, right, all
yards.
the soft skills.
And even in the cover letter, it just feels
Right, I know,
as
a little,
sincere as I try to make it.
right. Okay, so this is a great question. I'm glad you brought this up, Christine, because this is the topic that this kind of subtly comes up every once in a while, but I'm glad you addressed it head on. I'm going to make a very equivocal statement here, and hopefully Alki will agree with me. And if he doesn't, with this, we're here to challenge each other. So you're welcome to have a different opinion, Alki. So because Alki and I are both recruiters, all right. So and I'm also a career coach, but I see things in both lenses. So as a recruiter, here's kind of the deal, right? We evaluate resumes for hard skills and interviews for soft, hard and soft, but mostly soft. All right. It's a very important distinction. So even though in a job description, they'll say organized, team player, great with people, blah, 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 blah. That is not, your resume is not the place to address that. We go, want. We do not even see it. When people write on their resume at the top, all that lovely stuff, some people do it in a summary paragraph. It all looks the same to us because everybody's saying that kind of thing. The reality is that in the interview, we're going to suss out what we mean by interpersonal skills, organization, critical thinking, whatever. And we're going to hopefully ask certain questions that pull those qualities out of you in a way that aligns with the culture, in a way that aligns with the job, okay, in the interview. So do not worry yourself at all about the resume. The resume should be a focus on your hard skills. When I say hard skills, I mean your functional skills. Soft skills are behavioral. Your hard skills, right? The key words that we talk about all the time, right? So whatever that is, in your case, Christine, it's could probably be some version of, communications and what have you. And, a Maria, maybe it's going to be on the administrative side. And, like everybody's got their, or Bucky, it's going to be something probably in organizational development or learning, right? Like, there are functional skills that the employer wants to know. Can you do these things? Is it worth our time to interview you? That's our first check. And yes, also, hopefully, do you come from the sector? Do you come from the industry? Right. And so some of you might have heard that I have this concept that I call lane versus community. So your lane is what you do, it's your profession. Your community is the industry, mission, or sector that you serve. In a perfect world, most employers are looking for both. Not everybody, but mostly. So your resume should definitely be about your lane, the hard skills that needs to be customized for the job posting. Let me say that again. Your keywords, your functional skills need to be customized for the job posting. That's how recruiters think. They got a job posting in their hand and they got a resume in the other and they go, right? Is there an alignment? That's what we're looking for. And then the second layer is, oh, by the way, does this person come from our sector? And if they don't come from our sector, we're going to think twice. Okay. Now, occasionally an employer doesn't care. occasionally they're actually looking for somebody maybe outside the sector who has a fresh perspective. But I'd make this up. I'd say 95% of the time when they say XYZ industry experience preferred, like healthcare, association, government contracting, whatever, 9 times out of 10, they mean it. And they're going to actually wait until they find a candidate who has that background. So if you don't have the industry experience, I'm not saying you can't apply, but pack your patience, manage your expectations, because generally speaking, they're going to go after that person. Does that make sense? That's a longer answer. Alki, any thoughts, comments, challenges for what I just said?
So first off, I 100% agree. So we're good on that. I may have missed. Did you say they asked for it on in the job posting? They asked for soft skills, Christine?
It was just reading the job descriptions. I'm seeing it a lot,
Normal,
just
the
like
normal
Shira
stuff.
was saying. So it's just, and we had been through the resume and I was like, wait a second,
We missed
what?
the soft skills. No, we
And
didn't miss the soft
right.
skills.
And so
Yeah.
it's just been like, I've been trusting the process, but in the back of my mind, I was like,
Yeah, it's the
how do
interview.
I? So
Yeah.
do you even
Sure,
talk about it
sure.
in the cover letter?
So,
Oh, go ahead, Alki.
Yeah.
and I already see Shira shaking her head. So first off, what she said 100%, or 99.99998 times your resume is all about, we're looking for qualifications and hard skills. What I will say, and Shira covered it as well, is be prepared to demonstrate that side, because employers hire for qualifications and fit. And so if they're mentioning that, obviously they want you to be able to work and get along with everybody that's there. If you have meetings inside and outside with partners, vendors, customers, you're going to have to be able to talk to people and relate and things of that nature. So, of course they want to know that. They put it in the description. It's now become just a cliche part of many job descriptions. And so on your resume, you definitely don't, take away all that good real estate by listing all those things. I tell people sometimes, like if the job description is like, let's say it's sales and you're going to be talking to people. Well, if you've given sales presentations and things before, that's another way sometimes that we're like, if they're all giving sales, if they gave 100 sales presentations last year, we know they can talk to people and have interpersonal skills. But for the most part, yeah, your resume is built on hard skills, and it's in the interview that you do that. And a cover letter, you still don't, state the cliche, I have great interpersonal skills.
They're going to
I think the closest that I would get to that line is if you're giving an example that can do twofold, speak to an accomplishment or achievement or competency that you have, and then you can sneak in also that, hey, this required me to talk to groups of 100 at a time, and I led presentations, and then after there was follow-up. If there's a way you can mix it in together to kind of give that effect, you can, but definitely not just listing those things out on the resume.
Right. I 100% agree. Yeah, the cover letter is still. Now, speaking of cover letters, since you brought that up, let's go ahead and just go there for a moment, just in general with cover letters, because we don't often talk about cover letters on this meeting. So let me say something about cover letters. So I'm going to make a statement, but I'm going to say it twice with a little different emphasis. Okay. Because sometimes people say, do I actually need to write a cover letter? So here's my response to that. Cover letters are only read 2% of the time. However, cover letters are read 2% of the time. So if you're going to write one, write a good one. Does that make sense? Right? So there are people who actually will really read them. Very few people, but there are some that will. So when you're writing a cover letter, first of all, make it no more than 1 page. And I can actually share an example or two. But what you're looking to do there is highlight key aspects of the posting of the role. You want to be able to address why you're interested in this role, especially if you're interested in the mission, especially if that mission is something sort of interesting and unique. You want to make sure you emphasize that. And then you want to highlight the qualifications that you've already put on your resume. And one of the ways to do that, some people do a table, with 2 columns that'll say, your requirements, my qualifications. That's fine. Some people do that. I do something that's a little bit little more streamlined than that. And Christine, since I wrote your resume, it's actually a very similar kind of thing to the resume, where you have, and I'm pulling this up now, where you have a section you know, you have this opening, let's say, couple of paragraphs, and then you have a section like a one-liner that says something like, you know, following are the qualifications that I believe make me, you know, a strong fit for the role. And what you do is you're listing out the keywords with an example. So let me pull this up. Okay, so this is a real cover letter with redacted information. And it doesn't have to look exactly like this, right? But okay. So here, you know, this person decided to do 3 paragraphs, which is fine, 2, 3. You know, so here's like my commitment to my first paragraph, my commitment to your mission. The second paragraph, she actually pulled language from the job description as the organization continues to, you know, want to enhance, you know, members' professional growth. The role of the VP is going to be to do blah, blah, blah. They need a VP with strong fiscal and personal management capabilities, kind of a recap. And then my interest in advancing their strategic plan, it stems from my entrepreneurial approach, blah, 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 like highlights. But then here, following are competencies that I believe would greatly enhance my success in the role. Okay. Now, you'll see these terms here, management, communication, relations. Actually, it happened to be in that particular job description, the job description or job posting rather, only use those one words. That's actually not normal. Normally it would say like, you know, change management or, you know, project management or budget administration, like the two word competencies, that would go here. Okay. So maybe the competency the job posting was highlighting was data analytics. You know, she goes, you're using a data-driven approach. I've aligned staff and volunteers with a strategic plan, blah, blah, blah. Right. So she gave an example, a highlight to demonstrate the core competencies in that job posting. Okay, by the way, just wrapped it all up. So this is another way to do it. Instead of saying your requirements, my qualifications, you're actually saying your requirements were project management, member communications, blah, blah, blah. And then here is my example of that. Okay, so it just highlights it in another way if the person's actually going to read it. But here's my point when I said earlier, it's only read 2% of the time. Here's the thing. Do not put anything in this cover letter that is not already highlighted in your resume. In other words, if there are core qualifications you need to showcase for this role, don't just assume that you are going to just, oh, I'll put it in the cover letter and then it's going to be okay and they're going to see it. No, they actually usually won't. Your resume has, these days, your resume has to stand on its own 2 feet. Back, some of us are old enough to remember, like back in the 90s, right? Before we had the internet, before we had email, before we, right? We had to, right, lick an envelope or stick it in the fax, okay? In those cases, the cover letter literally covered the resume. That's why it's called a cover letter. And in that case, they actually did typically take a glance at the cover letter before turning. Remember your stapled page on the upper left-hand corner, right? They turned the page and they read the resume. They don't do that anymore. It's 2 separate documents. They read the resume first. They see if they like it. And then if they do, then maybe they'll touch the cover letter and then see, oh, let's put frosting on the cake. But the cake has to be good. Does that make sense? So just write it well. Oh, one more thing. We have to start talking about ChatGPT. Okay, so I'm officially going to say this, Alki. We've not officially discussed this, so we'll go ahead and just banter a little bit around this. Here's my opinion on such things. I do not believe that you should be using ChatGPT or generative AI for your cover letter and your resume. Okay, for a couple of reasons. On your resume, ChatGPT does not know your background. What happens is you're going to see on LinkedIn, everyone's like, oh, use ChatGPT, put in the job description. ChatGPT is going to take that job description and do a generic resume for you. It does not know your accomplishment stories. Okay. You want a resume that is thoughtfully crafted around your own experience. Now, I'm not saying you can't use it a little bit if you want to highlight, enhance your language, but the guts of it, the core content needs to be yours. It's not just a reparroting of the job. It's what accomplishments do you have that relate to that position, and ChatGPT is not going to know that. Now, the thing about the cover letter, and I've already, as a recruiter, I've been receiving these. Here's what you have to know, and we recruiters are getting hip to this. ChatGPT has a tone. It has a tone. It sounds a certain way. We're hip to that now. I've already seen, in fact, there were a couple of, it's very funny. There were a couple of cover letters that I got I don't know, a couple months ago, and they were almost identical. Like literally, I think that the person, two people put the job description in ChatGPT and it spit out almost this. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so funny. I couldn't say anything to the candidates, but I was aware of what was going on. So if you're doing that, and a lot of other people are doing that, it's irrelevant, right? It makes your cover letter moot, because then on top of which it tells the employer you didn't write this. Now, I'm not saying you have to write it. You could use, a writer, like I'm a writer or whatever, but my point is that it should be thoughtfully crafted around your competencies, not just something that has the ChatGPT tone, just because it sounds professional. Okay, that would be my opinion. Alki, what are your thoughts?
Agree. And I was sitting here shaking my head. Something I haven't talked to you about is TCS, which has come to me with resumes. It has to be targeted. You have to make a connection with the employers, which ChatGPT on its own won't do. And lastly, as for separation, if you're looking like everybody else, you're not going to stand out to the employer. So ChatGPT and others are tools to use, as Shira said, to help you build words, to maybe pull up if you need that kind of help, just to build a framework and a structure.
Right.
But at the end, the last thing that you need to do before you walk away is put your signature on your story, tell your story, which ChatGPT and others cannot do, and on your resume. We're looking for connection. Employers are looking for connection to the organization. What's your passion? Does it align with what we're looking for? Are you just like everybody else who just puts the same old, language on their resume? So you have to stand out and you have to separate yourself. So even though you may build it, when you're done at the end, make sure that it has your varnish on it.
That's right. That's yes. In fact, I have there's another copywriter colleague I have out there. Her name is Sam Horn, and she likes to say, you gotta put HI along with your AI, human intelligence, right? There always has to be human in the mix. If you're going to use it, that's okay. You can use it for some structure, but do not leave it alone. And that also includes your about section. I've noticed people who've been using it for the about section of their LinkedIn, and ChatGPT will hallucinate. It'll make up stuff about you, and unless you scrub that thing, you're saying stuff about yourself that may not be true. So really, really be careful when you're using that tool. If you use it at all, structure's okay, maybe some phrases okay, but the guts of it, the content needs to be yours. Okay, it's got to be accurate. All right, hopefully that helps. All right, so Tammy and Becky, you've been waiting very patiently. Tammy first, Becky second.
Good morning. Let's say you've done a pretty good job of optimizing your LinkedIn profile, and a recruiter reaches out to you for an opportunity that you were unaware of, and they want to have a screening with you. Is it reasonable to postpone that for a day or two until you're ready? And should you even schedule it if you don't have a job description provided?
So you're saying that you've been contacted by an employer for a screening interview,
Right.
and you're saying, is it okay to delay when you're scheduling, to schedule it a couple of days out?
Yeah.
100%. Of course, you have a schedule, you have a life. You're not supposed to, when they say jump, you don't have to say how high. In other words, you don't have to say, okay, yes, I'll meet with you this afternoon. No, I mean, now wait 2 weeks, that would be a little inappropriate, but within reason, of course. I mean, we appreciate people's schedules. So that's easy. And then you're saying that's the other thing that you mentioned is a little more interesting. Scheduling it without
Yeah.
the job description?
Yeah.
I'm wondering why you wouldn't have a job description if it's a real job. Like how would you
Same here. To me, that was a red flag. And I'm like, I need that job description to prepare for the screening. So
Now-
and determine if I'm a fit.
Is it that a recruiter just reached out to you on LinkedIn and said, just randomly said, hey, I've got a job. Do you want to interview? Is it that kind of thing?
Yeah,
Oh, that's different. Okay, that's what you didn't apply for a job. They reached out to you.
exactly.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to try to address that, and then Alki, please. So it is very likely, and this is yet another topic that is nice to talk about once in a while, to talk about recruiters. different kinds of recruiters and different ways that recruiters reach out to you. It is very likely that the recruiter who reached out to you is what we call a contingent recruiter. Okay. Now, a contingent recruiter is a third party, it's a headhunter. Contingent means that that recruiter, and by the way, Tammy, I apologize if you already know this, but I'm saying this for the sake of everyone. This recruiter likely has a volume of opportunities, of job openings. They are not getting paid for their work until the placement is done, meaning they are competing with other firms, maybe usually could be 3, 4, 5 other firms, and everybody's sort of running to the finish line and they're trying to get their candidates. So what's happening is the job description that they have, this is one of two things going on, Tammy, okay? Either they have a live job, a real job, but it's confidential, because if they were to let you know what it is, then you could go to the employer and you could go around them, and they're trying to hold their information close to the vest because they are competing with other firms. And so they're trying to keep it confidential. The other possibility is that if this recruiter works in what we call a vertical, okay, so it could be a career vertical or an industry vertical. For example, there are recruiters who just do finance and accounting search. There are recruiters who just place people in marketing, or just place people in a certain sector, like associations or commercial real estate or government contracting, that kind of thing. If that's the case, then what they might be doing is they might be, and I don't know how they phrased it to you, they should be appropriate if they do this. They're just sort of trying to build their network, right? To say, hey, Tammy, you look like a great person. I've got opportunities in general. I want you in my database, right? I want to know you're somebody that I can tap if I get an opportunity, which probably I will, because I search for people just like you, in which case there wouldn't be a job opportunity. But if they said that there was one, if they say specifically, then yes, you should ask for one and say to them, look, I understand this job might be confidential. That's okay, but can you at least give me a skeleton so I understand what you're looking for? That would be my take. Alki, thoughts?
Yeah, all good points. And I was curious, you may not have it in front of you, but I was curious what the wording was of the inquiry, because that I do contingency recruitment some, and that could, like she said, there's 80 different ways we can approach you depending on the scenario. So I'm more curious in what that inquiry said. If I reach out to you, and I usually am super clear. I'm like, hey, I actually have a hard opportunity that you look like to be a great fit for. I'd like to talk to you about it. Or if I'm like, I think I have an opportunity, but I want to have a conversation with you first. Do you have time? I'm usually pretty clear with at least some type of expectation, so the person knows whether or not it's just a chat, it's an inquiry, I have a hard job, but whether or not they share the job description or not depends a lot on what the wording was. And to Shira's point, not only can you always protect your schedule, but you can always ask. You can always ask, especially if they mention a job or a possible opportunity, you can ask, hey, is there any way that you have any bullet points, any specs, compensation, responsibilities, qualifications, anything that I can look at ahead of our call? You can ask. If they say no, then you just decide, hey, I want to take this call and I'll set it for XYZ date, or I don't want to take this call.
Yeah. And it's not, look, to me, there's nothing wrong with having a 30-minute conversation with a recruiter. You never know, right? And every recruiter is different. Their relationship to you is different. That would be my opinion, but of course it's a personal choice. But Tammy, did you quickly want to share what the wording was? How did they reach out to you?
So they reached out by messaging on LinkedIn, and even the message was, now that I think about it, was a bit cryptic. But they had a phone call, and I called because I wanted to know more about the opportunity. And they wanted to screen me right then and there. And I'm like, well, that seems weird. If you're not telling me, I need to decide if I want to invest the next 30 minutes, in an opportunity that you're not really forthcoming about.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm more than willing to, I'm still working. So in a couple of days, I'll have time to circle back with you. Let's schedule a call. But in the interim, I'd like a job description.
Yeah.
And they were very cagey on that.
Yeah.
They wouldn't do it.
That sounds a little bit fishy. because a legit recruiter should have something, or at least say to you, no, I don't have an actual job description. But I do recruit for people like you all the time, in which case I just want to get to know you. That is perfectly legitimate. But if they said they had a job and they're not sharing any of it with you, I wouldn't. I mean, that sounds a little fishy.
And the part about Shira touched on it a second ago, like, I mean, I've definitely, reached out to people and said, hey, do you got a second? And you either do or you don't. But some people make calls for tomorrow, some people make their calls for 3 days, and then sometimes there's either an opportunity that they've been working on for a while and it's just gotten more urgent, or they just got something that's super hot. And to Shira's point, they're competing with all kinds of other agencies to get this contingency one. So we can like message you and go, hey, I'm available in the next hour if you are, but you are in control of your schedule, and you can always go, hey, now I'm working, I can't do it today. And if they're like, oh well, it's oh well, and on to the next one.
So, Buki, I know that you had your hand up, and then you had to, I guess you had a technical glitch and dropped off. So we'll go with you first, and then Maria will be second.
All right, thank you, Sharon. Good morning, everybody. So remember I told you that I had an interview that I was waiting on the feedback from, right? So I'm not going to mention the company, but so the recruiter that I was working with reached back to me, and I just wanted to get an understanding of how to either respond to this type of email or maybe tweak how I interview going forward. So the recruiter said that he heard back from the team that sadly they've decided to move on with other stronger candidates. He said that the interview team mentioned that I interviewed well. There was no negative feedback, but there were some stronger skills that the other candidates had. That being said, he will keep my profile with him and let me know if something else comes up. This was very personal, very different from other responses or feedback that I've received, but he mentioned stronger skills twice. And I then responded, okay, thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it, but can you let me know what the stronger skills are, just so I can, keep it in mind for my growth and development. I actually don't expect the response, because even when I've done that in the future, they don't respond.
Yeah. So let me share this. That's the most normal. That is the most normal feedback. I've shared that feedback a lot of times. Alki has too. That is
Okay.
the most normal, because what you have to understand is that when we say someone has stronger skills, it doesn't mean that your skills were weak and Buki, you need to improve your skills. It's that we had people with more experience, people who've been doing it longer, right? Who had just have. That's often when we say stronger skills. So, for example, I'm doing a search right now for a job. It's an operations job, and it happens to have a financial component, like financial management, that kind of thing. So we've had candidates who have stronger skills, meaning they have more experience. They have deeper skills in that area. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't grow your skills, but it wasn't that you did something wrong in the interview to say, oh, your skills were too weak. It's just that by comparison, somebody else had deeper, that's another way you can think of it, deeper experience in a particular skill. That's what we mean by stronger. We mean deeper. Now, if there are specific, if there are specific skills you want to grow and you may want to learn about that, you can ask, but you're right, they probably won't share, because remember, it's not in the interview process, it's about the employer. I mean, it should be about you too on the level in terms of your career's motivators. But in terms of the actual reasons why people vet, they're like, look, we need these skills for the job, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. And we're looking for people who have a certain level and depth of experience, which has nothing to do with you per se. It's just who are the candidates who fit that mark. It's a right. You have to look at it from the recruiter's perspective. From your perspective, in terms of your interviewing ability, maybe, sometimes, occasionally, maybe somebody might share a little something with you. It's usually not the case, because employers are kind of afraid of people being litigious, frankly, and they're very cagey about, right, sharing anything that might cause anybody to feel a certain way about the employer. So they'll use very generic language, which is very, very rare to get the specifics, but I wouldn't take it personally. It's just more, they needed certain kinds of qualifications. You happen to have some, but maybe somebody else had something that was deeper. Does that help, Elke?
Yeah, I guess that's my worry that I shared, that I'm not matching up to the level of experience and the years of experience that these jobs.
Well, and that's a different story. Like, are you applying
Yeah.
for the right jobs, right? Because it could be, and I know you and I have talked about your background, right? And you're in that interesting spot because you absolutely do have skills. You've got very good skills. And if you're applying for a job that's like here, then they might keep saying that. Now, it might be that if you're applying for a job here, they're okay with somebody having a learning curve. But
Mhm.
a lot of times these days, employers are so risk averse. They want people who come in with the automatically with that level, because a lot of people don't have time to train. It's a very, it takes experience to get experience. So sometimes I know sometimes you need to come in here and grow your skills to here, rather than apply for the job that's here and then have the learning curve. Most employers don't have the time for that because we're so lean. I will tell you, almost like every, period of time, I think employers get leaner and leaner and leaner. COVID was one of those situations. People downsized a lot and didn't rehire. And so now you've got a situation where it's just, again, particularly lean, where you got to come in and like know exactly what you're doing. So you want to look for position, in my opinion, look for positions that are a little bit more level. And then when you're in it, develop your skills. That's just a thought. Alfie?
This everything Shira said is on point, and this is such this feedback thing is a whole conversation by itself with a million layers to it. One of the things I was thinking when Shira was talking is it could just be one person on the interview team who thinks that. Everybody else may have said, you know what, we like her. But then there's one person who, because of experience or just because they're different, or the way that this position interacts with them and their department or whatever, they may say, I like John better. John's done this before. He's done exactly this kind of work. Sometimes, like Shira said, you're actually okay. It's just one person who has a perspective, or two people, or it could be three against one. That's one whole side of this that a lot of candidates never hear that I've been a part of. Shira's been a part of these. And a lot of times we walk away scratching our head saying, we think she has enough experience for it, but they're the ones doing the hiring. So a lot of times it's just one or two, or it's just, four against one, or two, somebody else who makes the thing. Also, I was going to say, because Shira's spoken to you before, I won't go in depth, but yeah, recruiters and employers, they don't have the time that a coach or a headhunter who's been spending time with you and looking for multiple opportunities, who gets to know you. We can come back and say, listen, remember we talked about this skill before? Like, yeah, you're about 2 years off. So let's tweak the positions that you're going for. The employer, usually they're just going to tell you, yeah, stronger candidate, and they won't get a chance to go in depth. Lastly, I'll say too, I've seen this a lot. Sometimes when they say stronger experience, it's obviously a cover to keep from getting real specific and to protect themselves. But sometimes stronger means that person may not have it may not be like multiple years of experience. It could be that they've worked with a similar product, or they might be in a very similar industry, so they have more of the exact same industry experience. And I've seen that a lot too, where people just have their own perspectives, like, she's done it for 11 years. He's done it for 2, but he's done it with our vendors before and in our neighborhood and in our community, and that just gives us a better feeling. So that stronger skills thing, and I would definitely ask, hey, could you elaborate? They probably aren't going to do it, but it's so hard. And that's one that does make you walk away saying, what? My skills aren't good. Come on. It's a tough one, but I would agree with everything that Shira said. And I would, if I can't get the feedback, which is tough because you don't know exactly what to work on as you approach your next opportunity. If you know that you are levels under experience wise, that could be a factor, as Shira said. So.
Yeah. And it is, I like to say that, job search is a little bit like the Olympics. You can be a fabulous, right, athlete, and everybody goes to the Olympics and they're all fabulous. And it's that triple toe loop, and it's that 9.7 versus 9.5, right? Stronger experience. It can be very, very subtle, because the fact that you even got to the interview means that you made it to the Olympics. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. But they can only hire one person. So they have to do these little subtle things. And I'll give you an example. I know of somebody right now who's a finalist candidate for she's one of 3 people in a search. And the employer, this is the flip side of what you're talking about. So this person has perfectly fine experience, but there's one aspect of the job, it happens to be financial management, There's one aspect of the job where the employer figured out that the candidate actually doesn't enjoy that work very much. Will do it, is capable, but doesn't actually enjoy it. The other two candidates love it. This person will tolerate it. And so that employer, I mean, good on the employer for thinking about the candidate and what the candidate wants and make the candidate happy. It's like, I got two people here who love this work. I got one person who's very, very capable, but doesn't love it. I'm a little concerned that this candidate's going to get in there and be like, all right, I'll tolerate it, right? But not really love it, because the financial management is a big piece of the job. Okay, so employers are thinking about all kinds of things about your capabilities, your interests, like they're thinking about the fit all the way along the lines, right? Not just your qualifications, but do you want this? And are we going to like each other? I mean, all of that, right? It's very, very subtle that they have a lot of variables to put into the mix. So that's a very long answer. Hopefully, Pookie, hopefully that helps.
Oh yeah, thank you both. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Maria, then Janine.
Thank you, Shira.
Hey,
Good
Maria.
morning, everyone.
Mm.
I have a question for you. Excuse me. I also wanted just to touch just a little bit on what you were just talking about. I had experience last year for a position I applied for, and I made to the second interview, and I felt really good. I thought I'm going to get this job. Got not a letter, they actually called me, and I never received a call to say I didn't get a job before, but they called me and said that you are really a great candidate, but we, unfortunately had to go with someone else. And so, but it was just the nicest phone call. And then a few months after that, I got an email from one of the ladies. I interviewed, I think, with 5 people. And I got an email from one of the ladies who was on the interview with me. And she emailed me to ask me if I was interested in another position that was part-time. And and it felt so good because she said, well, when we interviewed you, we really loved you. And I know you have these skills. And so I have this other position that I wonder if you might be interested in. So I thought, wow, because this was maybe 5 or 6 months later.
That is actually more normal than you think. The fact
Really?
that, oh yes, absolutely. Let's walk a mile in an employer's shoes, shall we?
Okay.
Yeah, we always have to do a call like this. You are the employer, okay? You have just met a fabulous candidate named Maria. You loved her. Fine. There was somebody else who, had the 9.7. Okay, fine. But Maria was still a 9.5. Don't you think that you're going to find a way to get Maria on board? 6 months later,
I see.
this other position comes up and they're like, oh my gosh, Maria, she could be fabulous for this. We loved her for this other job as a person with her qualities, her qualifications. She could be a great fit for us. We have another role, similar, part-time, what have you. Maybe she'd be interested. Wouldn't you go back to your candidate pool and revisit it and say, I had this great candidate or a great set of candidates? Why wouldn't you? Why would you go back to the drawing board and go back out to the recruiting pool when you had somebody who was a perfectly great fit for something else, but could be a fit for? Did that make sense? So that's how the
It
employer is
does.
thinking, is they're going to go back sometimes to the candidate they've already met who were number 2 candidates. For whatever reason, they didn't make the number 1, but they were still fabulous. And is there something else that is there some other way we can onboard them? That's very normal.
Wow, I
Which
didn't know
should
that.
give everybody here some encouragement that if you made it to a finalist round, it is very likely that that employer is considering you for other things. You're in their database. They could be thinking of you and go, oh my gosh, remember Scylla, remember Janine, remember Maria? Oh, they were fabulous. Now all of a sudden we have something that maybe they're still on the market. Maybe we've caught them at the right time and they'll come back to you and say, hey, would you be interested in this? Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea. I had never had that happen before. And I'm like, wow, this
That's
is
how employers
awesome.
think.
Yeah.
To maximize their time, right? If they've already met
Yeah.
you, why wouldn't they consider you, right?
All right, that makes sense. But
Mhm.
that wasn't my question. I just wanted to share that, in regard to what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
But my quick question is on LinkedIn. I know you might have already answered this before, but I've heard both ways about as far as putting on your LinkedIn that you're available to work.
Mhm.
I've heard folks say, don't put that on there.
No, it's
And I've heard some say,
good.
well, why not put it on? If you're looking for work, why not say it? And I am looking for work and I have been for the past 6 months.
Mhm.
And I'm okay with putting it on there, but I just wasn't sure because as I said, I've heard
We've
both.
got because we feel both ways all at the same time. It's both and. I'll
Okay.
give you mine, I'll
Okay.
give you his.
Okay.
and it is a
Okay,
personal choice. So
thanks.
here's where I've sort of landed on it. Okay.
Okay.
If you want your network to know that you are looking for a job so that they can offer opportunities to you, you may want to consider putting it on, because that's where I found it's been actually very helpful. Your personal professional network. Hey, Maria, I didn't know that you were in transition. Hey, can I talk to you? Hey, I've got a something or another. It's actually, to me, a very good thing for that purpose. The other side of it is the whole, why some people say don't necessarily do it, is it could have an air of desperation. It's just what is. It's just a psychological thing. And sometimes recruiters will actually feel a little bit not that they won't call you, but it's just this subtle thing. Okay. And so I'm
Okay.
not saying to do it or not to do it, but I have seen benefit on the personal networking side. Look, even myself, I have a former coaching client. And I was just doing normal LinkedIn search. I happened to stumble across her LinkedIn page, and I noticed she had the banner which said to me, "Oh, she's looking." So I wrote to her. I'm like, "Hey, so and so, just don't chat, how are you? Blah blah. And we're going to be setting up a call soon." But I would not have known that had she not put that on there. So see, like,
Mm,
it's one of those subtle things. So it really is a personal choice, Maria. I'm not gonna say don't do
okay.
it. Just know that there's two sides. Alki, thoughts?
Okay. Thank you.
Personal choice for sure. On both sides of the coin work. Yes, there's a lot of discussion. I read them often. And a lot of times I want to jump in so bad and add a comment like, oh my God, you're so wrong for saying that. But um, if you're looking for work, and this is anybody, if you're looking for work and you want to use the open to work symbol, you can use it. Everybody who's given their comments and their thoughts, I mean, great, we appreciate them. But if you want to let people know your network, outside your network, that you're looking for work, that's your prerogative. The blowback that comes with it, that's your prerogative. People do talk about this desperate thing, and in the recruiting world, passive candidates, meaning the ones who are working or not even looking for jobs, a lot of times are attractive because, they're not desperate and they're not going to lie to us in interviews and things like that just to get a job because they're already working. So a lot of times they do seem more attractive, but that doesn't mean that, you can't be hungry. You can't just let people know. And I don't think that it automatically means that you're desperate either. You're just using the function that they have. Now, I will say, there are some people who put open to work and then they do like 3,000 posts a day saying, hey guys, I'm looking. And then, that may turn a lot of
Yeah.
people off,
Right.
but it comes down to a personal preference. And hey, there's some people who are go-getters. They don't care what people think. They want a job and they're going to do what they have to do. So
Yeah.
it's just a lot of personal preferences.
Yeah, there's sometimes a guy on this call named Kelly Nugent, and he used to be, but when he was looking for a job, I guess whenever that banner came out, couple years ago now, something. And he was actually the first person that changed my mind, because he's himself said when he put that on, he started getting all these people in his network saying, "Oh, Kelly, you're leaving. How can I help you?" I was like, "Oh, there's another perspective there, right?" So like, you just have to weigh it. Yeah.
Okay. Because that was my thinking too. I was really wanting to do it for the people in my network, not so much for recruiters, but just for people that I know.
Yeah, those were the people
Yeah.
who are more likely to be like, "Hey, how can I help?"
Right. Okay.
Okay,
Well, thank you both. I appreciate your feedback.
you're welcome. Janine?
Oh, yeah. Hi. Yes. Hi. Good morning, everyone. And I I've been in the job market been working for so many years, but coming to the interview question, like the salary part, that is really hit me. I really don't know. For the first part, there's a HR screening, and then HR screening, that HR always ask this question: what is your, the expectation, the pay? And then I always say, oh, well, when I would like to get more job details and talk to the hiring manager, and then see we both have a mutual benefit, and then we can discuss this part. But if HR just keep pushing, just want to get some words or some numbers out of my mouth. So I would like to know you
Oh,
guys.
Alki and I are chomping at the bit for this one. All right.
Yeah, I like to know, I mean, how you guys see your
Yeah.
suggestions.
Yeah. All right. So this could take up the rest of our time. Here we go. Big deep breath. All right. So first of all, we have to talk about the two ways that employers approach the salary conversation these days. Now, if you had brought this up 5 years ago, this would be different. But today, there are two ways that they do it. Either they don't post the salary, in which case on the interview, they're going to say, hey, what are your expectations? Or they do post the salary, which is a different situation. In fact, Janine, you're going to find more and more and more employers posting salary because in fact, there are actually some states where it's a requirement, like Colorado and California, and I think New York. Like there are some states where literally they have to post because of something called pay equity. And that has to do with trying to equalize, if you will, the pay conversation, because sometimes people who are marginalized, traditionally marginalized in the employment market, will tend to get underpaid because that person doesn't negotiate well for themselves. Their salary is always lower and they're kind of depressed. And so if the employer posts the salary, then everybody knows it's a level playing field. Okay. That's one situation. You're not asking about that. You're asking about if they don't post and is that right? When they ask
Yes.
you, okay, what do you want? First of all, and we're going to do this again, we're going to walk a mile in the employer's shoes. Janine, you have to listen to this. This is very, very, very important. You understand what I'm about to share, okay? When an employer, a recruiter, an HR person, even the hiring manager asks you that question on the first interview, here is what they're doing. They are saving themselves time and you time by not wasting your time for a salary that is absolutely not near your range. I want you to imagine that you've gone through this interview process, first level, second level, and nobody asks you about salary. They haven't posted it. They haven't talked about it. And it turns out second, third level, suddenly somebody brings it up and you guys are $50,000 off, $20,000 off, a range that is not even near your range. And you're thinking to yourself, I've just wasted my time. I've spent all this time preparing. I spent all this time interviewing. I've spent emotional energy thinking about this role. You could actually be thinking, nobody took the time to think about my side of it and even ask me about what I want. And now all of a sudden they're springing the salary at me that is completely off base. Both sides are thinking that. They're thinking about that for themselves and thinking about that for you. Nobody wants it to be that much off. And so that's why they're addressing it right up front. I want you to imagine that you're looking for an appliance or something on Amazon. I don't know, whatever. You went to go get a product on Amazon and you had a certain price range. Okay. That's part of going to be your considerations when you're scrolling down the page. It's one of the first things you're going to think about. You're like, oh, I want a refrigerator, but I want a refrigerator at this price, not that price. You're going to automatically filter out all of the refrigerators that are at the high price. That's a first level consideration for you because you could fall in love with that refrigerator and then it's way out of your price range. Okay. This is exactly the same. This is the reason why they're doing it. They're saving everybody's time in the process. So first of all, does that make sense? Okay. Now, what do you do with that? Okay. This is the harder question. I understand why they do it. I do it myself. Although these days I post this, I always encourage my employers to post the salary. But back 5 years ago when I wasn't doing that, I had this conversation with candidates all the time. I want to make sure I'm not wasting anybody's time. How do you handle it? Okay. So I have a formula or phrase that I encourage people to use when you're answering that question. Now, before I give you the phrase, you have to have already done some homework. Okay. You need to come into this conversation. It's the same thing as if you were buying a house or even selling a house. This real estate and job search are very, very parallel. And so imagine that you are buying a house. Okay. You know what your price range is, X to Y, right? And you might have a little bit of flex room on Y, and you might have a little bit of flex room on X, but generally it's X to Y. Okay. And so it's the same thing with the employer. You've got to know in your mind, you've got to know your range, first of all. And you've got to know the number that's going to be what I call your happy dance number. Okay. And the number that's going to be your bottom. But here's the thing. You're not going to give a range to the employer. Please, please, please do not give a range to the employer. Do you know why? What number are they going to give you? If you say, I want X to Y, what number are they going to offer you? X. They're going to offer you the low number because it's a business decision for them. They're trying to get away with not paying as much as, I mean, that's just business, right? Everybody is negotiating. So you do not give a range. In your mind, you have a range, but you don't give that range. You go with your happy dance number. Now, how you figure out that number, there's a wide variety of ways to do it. Look at them, look at your own salaries, look at salary.com, talk to people. Like there's a lot of ways to think about it. Look at the sector, or look at there's a lot of, I can't say your specific situation, but it's presuming that you've done your homework and you recognize number Y is a good, solid, now I know benefits come into play as well, or a lot of, and commute, and I know there's other variables, okay? But generally speaking, salary Y is a happy dance number for me. It's a realistic number for the market. It's not 100,000, it's not a ridiculous number. It's a, good, solid, makes sense number. Now take that number. I'm going to make up this number. I'm just going with kind of a middle where I'm going to say $120,000. Okay, I'm just making up a number. So let's say that's your happy dance number. You have a little flexibility, but that's really your where you want. So what you would say to the employer, and this is my phrase, and again, Alki, love to hear your own version of this, but this is my phrase. So what you would say to the employer is, when they say, what are your expectations? You would say, well, I'm seeking, you might want to write this down. I'm seeking a total cash compensation package around 120,000 or in the $120,000 range. You're not giving them two numbers, just $120,000 range. Now, here's what's going to happen in the mind of the employer. Okay, they're going to listen to that number and quickly they're going to make a calculation. You're either on point or you're not. And here's what I mean by that. Either 120 is squarely in the middle of their range and they're like, great, no problem, Janine. And they will move on. You've answered the question. They have no problem with it and they will move on. If you are above their range, here's what's going to happen. They're going to take a breath and they're going to say, clear their throat. They're going to go, well, Janine, actually, the top, this is the only time they're going to tell you the top of their range. The top of the range is actually more like 105. Do you have any flexibility? And then in Janine's mind, she knows she's got flexibility down to 105 because remember, you started with your happy dance number. That means you probably have a little bit of a flex room. So then you say, well, actually, Mr. Employer, so as I mentioned, I'm looking for a total cash compensation package around 120. Now can we talk about benefits? Now you stick benefits in the conversation and now that rounds out the package. And then you say, okay, so can you share with me a little bit about how much medical costs? Do you have a bonus structure, commute, no commute, blah, 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 blah. And you have a little bit of pre-negotiation and you see if it makes sense, okay? And probably does because you knew that 105 was actually in your range anyway, but now you're just having a kind of a negotiated conversation. But here's the other thing too. You could say 120 and then they say, Janine, well, actually, oh man, highest we can go here is 75. And you're like, thank you. Thank you for letting me know. That's a huge range. Like you're not going to go to 75 if 120 is actually your number, right? And so then you can graciously say, oh, thank you, Mr. Employer, for letting me know that. Yeah, that's just, I can't see that working, right, with my range. You've just saved yourself so much time, but you've also given yourself an opportunity to let the employer meet you where you're at, right, and see if there's actually negotiation. So that would be that's my little speech. So Alki, thoughts?
I mean, that was a beautiful speech, done very well too. And I'm sitting here thinking, Janine, and when you mentioned, I think you mentioned HR, this whole conversation, this is another big one, because Christine asked in the chat, well, what about when they asked on the application? There's so many stops along the way to talk about money, and I call it funny money because conversations get funny. It gets awkward, palms get sweaty, all kinds of things happen. And it's real important too when it comes up. Like if it's just the application part, that's just trying to tell whether or not you get in the door or not from the beginning, just on the application. When you mention HR, a lot of times if it's not a recruiter and not the hiring manager that you're talking to and it comes up, if you're talking to human resources, a lot of times they're the gatekeeper. They're the money gatekeeper too. Like, hey, we can let you in. Your number, phew, you made it in the door. We'll talk about money later if you get further down the road. So sometimes you don't even get to have a real conversation. It's just that question. And what I wish for in my dream world, and it doesn't happen, but I try to do it, and Shira does it, is be as transparent as possible and have real conversation about money when it comes up, whether I bring it up or the candidate brings it up. I go ahead and talk about money because it's no need to waste a lot of people's time, like Shira said. So it's the best thing if the person who asked you is prepared to discuss the whole scenario, what Shira just laid out. That doesn't happen a lot of times at the HR level. And it doesn't happen if you're not close to final interview or even the one that they've decided to offer. Some people, they haven't even discussed it in detail like this until they get to the final offer, unfortunately. But it has a lot to do too with when money comes up. But anyway, I agree with everything that she said. I jotted some notes while she was talking. The happy dance number, and she came back and she covered it. You definitely need to do some type of research first. You don't have to be a rocket scientist, and you may not get real numbers, and Glassdoor sometimes throws out numbers that are close or not close, but you need to do research on yourself first. You need to know what your numbers are and what you think you're worth and what you need to pay your bills and do all those things. You need a range in your head of your walkaway number, your happy dance. When she mentions happy dance and like your bottom, like that, when they came back with the 77 or 75, whatever that was, you should already know, like, if that meets your needs and your desires or not. But then when you listen to the opportunity, you leave some wiggle room for flexibility too, because you don't want to be $50,000 off. But if you're off just by a little bit, just like she laid out the example with them, people can be flexible at that point, but you definitely need to do some research and then come to the table. The other thing that I'll say, and the last thing that I'll say is, my word, and I was listening for it, Shira, when you do give a number, if you listen closely, she said, I'm looking for around 100,000. And so that is like a plus minus. I've told candidates before, hey, tell them, 100,000, give or take, ballpark, 100 grand, around, like those, that leaves room at the top and the bottom, and it kind of lets them know where your zone is.
Right.
To her point, if you give a range, then yeah, it could come in higher, it could come in lower, or they could go with the low number. But I love how she put that, around 100,000, around 80,000. Sometimes they may go, when you say around, what do you mean? Well, that's when you can flip it back to them and go, hey, tell me a little bit more about, the requirements, the responsibilities, or, are you able to share the budget? Are you able to share where you guys are, a ballpark figure? And maybe they'll share that to give you an idea of what they're playing with. So it's a conversation. A lot of people don't have it. They like to push the question on you. And then once you give a wrong answer, they push you out of the testing room and they slam the door behind you. And that's not the way that we want it to be, but it goes that way sometimes.
So a couple more thoughts on this, and then we're gonna have to wrap up soon. So first of all, remember, so Alki pointed out the whole around thing. So instead of giving a number like 120, if your happy dance number, meaning your high number, your happy dance number, fits in what I call, I'll explain this in a second, fits in what I call low, mid, and high ranges, you can do this. You can do something else. So here's what I mean by that. So let's say your happy dance number is 100,000. Let's say your happy dance number is 140,000. Let's say your happy dance number is 180,000. Here, why did I use those numbers? Because actually, recruiters also think in low hundreds, mid hundreds, high hundreds. Okay. If your happy dance number is on the low end of that low, mid, or high, you can also say that. Well, I'm looking for something in the low hundreds. Even if they give you 100, that's still in your happy dance number. I'm looking for something in the mid hundreds. Even if they give you 140, that's still in your happy dance number, but they could give you 150. I'm looking for something in the upper 100s. Even if they give you 175, it's still in your happy dance. Does that make sense? So you can do that as well. And I want to mention two more things about going above your number. So Alki mentioned, you're right, you've got this little range, but there are two things going on here with that. So let's say you said 120 and they go, sure, no problem. That probably means they could have gone higher. If they say it very quickly, that means that they could go higher. Now, how much higher, I don't know, but here's what you can do. Just because you put out that number doesn't mean you're actually stuck with it necessarily. Now you go through the rest of the process. You go all the way to the end, and you've been listening now about the role. To your point, Janine, what's the scope of the role? What is, what's involved? It might be that you're like, this is a hefty job. It's actually worth a little more than 120. You can go at the end of the process now, pre-offer, not post-offer, right before an offer, because you know if you're going to get, it's likely there's checking your references, your top 2 candidate, top 2 finalists, you know if you're right at the end. Then I would say to the employer, before they go through their paperwork and actually create an offer letter for you, and they're in final decision making, then you can say, look, Mr. Employer, Ms. Employer, look, back in the beginning of the process, I know that I wanted to bring up the compensation because I know you're getting to the end here and you're probably going to be you might be thinking about my compensation. I wanted to revisit this because now that I've been through the process, it feels like a heftier job than the 120 that I mentioned. What I'd like to throw out there is, would you consider something that's closer to 130 or 140 or whatever the number is? You just toss that little seed. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong. You don't have to stick with that 120 number. You can say, I'd like to see if there's any wiggle room here. Can we move the needle a little bit higher? That's the first point. Here's the second. I want to move to remember that other category when they actually do post the salary? Here's a little tip for you. Ready? And any HR person, if they were on this call, they would be nodding their heads when I say this. I want everybody to listen up. If an employer posts salary, 99 times out of 100, they have 10K wiggle room on the top. If they post 120, 99 times out of 100, they can actually pay 130. They don't want to. Their target is 120, but they actually have 10K. Now, they don't have 20K. They don't have 50K. They typically have 10K. That's just the way that it goes. I know this because I've been talking to employers now for a long time with this whole posting salary. Almost every single time they give me a 10K wiggle room right at the top. Okay. So you can actually, if you see 120 as the job posting number, in the interview, they are likely to say to you, hey, did you notice the posting number? Are you okay with it? And you can say, well, actually, do we have any wiggle room to 130? You can ask. And they will likely say yes. Okay, so that's just a tip for you. All these little, subtle behind the scenes stuff that's going on with HR is helpful to know.
You can always ask questions. To her point, well, if they give you the opportunity, you can always ask questions about anything, and especially about offers, because, and it's been said, you can get the biggest and the fastest raise that you'll ever get working for an employer during the offer process. And a lot of times people just don't ask questions. You never know until you ask. I don't even know if you tell somebody to, not ask a crazy question, but I think you can always ask. And when you add the word wiggle room to it, the words wiggle room, that's a safe question that usually doesn't offend anybody. Hey, is there any wiggle room on your PTO? Is there any wiggle room on the vacation? Is there any wiggle room on the benefits when they start? Is there any wiggle room on the start time? Because we ask the same questions to the candidate too. Right.
Wiggle room is a very safe way to phrase it. Because you're not making a demand, you're not giving an ultimatum, you're not saying, all right, do we have any flexibility here? Any wiggle room? Perfectly appropriate. Jenny, I know there's a much longer answer than what you were expecting.
No, very appreciate, very, very appreciate. So I think of, so would that be possible if if you said the upper number and then that's really out of the budget of the position, then in the HR screen part, I would be just removed.
And not necessarily. It depends on how close you are to their range. So look, if you, in your application, if you put down 120, okay, you haven't even talked to the employer, but you put down 120, but they can pay 110, they're likely still going to consider you and they're going to call you and say, hey, we're about $10,000 off. Is that okay? That's close enough where they can be like, yeah, she probably would. But if they can only pay 75, absolutely, they're going to screen you out, and that's good. You've just saved yourself time. They're going to make a little calculation to say, if for somebody who's asked for 120, like what's probably their bottom. But if it's way off, you want them to screen you out.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, Alki, I know you've been monitoring the chat a little bit. Did you want to, I know people have asked a number of things. Alki, anything else that we should be addressing? I think somebody said, Tammy's asked about the Great Resignation 2.0. Did you? I haven't even heard of this.
Yeah, it was a big article on fortune.com last week, and a couple of other news outlets sort of
Oh.
picked up on it. And so basically what they're saying, it's kind of the second wave of the great resignation that happened at the tail end of the pandemic.
Mhm.
And, you know, lots of people are looking to change their jobs in the next 6 months to a year because they're overworked. You know, there's
Yeah.
4 people doing the work of 6,
Yeah,
you know.
that's right. Yeah, and we see those waves, right? Around this time, you know, after a recession. So yeah. But look, everybody's unique. I mean, we in HR will look at these statistics, right? But you yourself need to make good choices around like, leaving a job, you know, and it may or may not say anything about your particular place in the market. Like look at, you know, somebody in high tech right now with all of the massive layoffs, there's a lot of competition in that sector. Whereas in other sectors, there's a dearth of employees. And so, you know, there's less competition. So it really personally, and may or may not affect you, but it is kind of interesting to see sort of what the wave is.
To Shira's point, you know, us who are in the industry, like I put in the chat to Tammy, like I hadn't read the Fortune article on 2.0. I remember 1.0, and it was a big thing, I guess, in the pandemic, but it was more a big thing, I think, for people who are not in the industry. We monitor these things our whole career, waves, retirements, resignations, layoffs. Like we're always watching these things. I think the Great Resignation term came out because the pandemic brought such a huge change to the job market across the globe, and there's still been fallout since that. There'll probably be 2.5 and 3.0 and 4.0. It'll continue to go. I think that catchphrase Great Resignation was because I think what I can't speak for Shira, but most of the recruiters I talked to, some of us haven't really seen a job market like this, or post-COVID job market, or 2024, 2023 job market, and the things that are happening. I think this is the first time people got a chance to see like, oh wow, like I've been at my company for 10 years going to the office, and pandemic happened and now they're letting us work from home. Like, wow, the world's flipped upside down. And I think it's just a perspective that candidates realize, and people and family, spouses and moms and dads realize, like, you know what, I can ask my boss, like, can I work from home 1 or 2 days, and they may let me do it now. And so people are resigning because they're realizing they can pivot to other opportunities. There's a lane now for people to do all these other things on the side, and so people are leaving. To me, Great Resignation is the power to up and leave and have more choices and take more chances and take more risk out here, as opposed to not resigning. You know, resigning for some people is like a taboo word. You know, hey, Joe left or Jill left. Now people are doing it, and people are doing it in mass for different reasons. And some companies are losing 4, 5, 6, 7 people. But on the flip side, companies are also laying off 5, 10, 20, 100 people at the same time. So I say monitor it if you're in the job search. Maybe there's a company that's like, hey, we just lost 100 workers and we're getting ready to do a big push to hire 100 people. And if that's your industry, you might can take advantage of it that way.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually about the whole life situation. It's a great point because there are a lot of people who moved during the pandemic, and their employer may or may not have been comfortable with that, or may say, hey, we want everybody back in the office. So they've made a life change, and so they can't do that. Or to Alki's point, maybe they did, you know, move, or they want more work-life balance, and they're like, you know what? I don't like the situation, you know, the work-life situation. I now can go for a remote job. We didn't have that in mass pre-COVID. You know, global national companies had that, but a lot of rank and file local job, like here in the DMV, I don't know what the number was, but let's just say you know, 80% of DMV companies pre-COVID were full-time in the office. Yeah, you could remember we used to use the word telework. You could telework, you know, maybe 1 day a week or something. But now people realize they can get a job anywhere. A lot of competition for that. Just please know that if you do apply online for a remote job, you are now competing with the entire country. So that's the other side of it. Just so you know, employers can get 1 to 200 resumes in 24 to 48 hours when they post a job that's remote. But at the same time, yes, you have more opportunities for remote work, in which case, you know, people might, you know, say, hey, I don't need to stay in my job. So I think there's, like Talki's point, I think there's a confluence of reasons for that. All right, we had, who just had their, oh, Hope, you just had your hand up. Do you still have a question?
Hello, good morning. Sorry, I know we're probably running out of time here. But kind of going into what you guys were saying before, I'm actually switching careers and I'm in the tech sector, which is horrible right now. And I recently did a boot camp so I can legitimize my freelance work. And my question is, I have a lot of experience with sales and customer service, also logistics. I have a vast skill set. But I'm not really sure what I should put on my resume because you don't want to flood it with too much stuff. I do have projects that I did do, so I think I should probably put like one of those projects on there, but I'm not really sure how I should go about it. Any suggestions?
Yes, I'm going to give you a broad suggestion, and please know I do career coaching. Actually, I think Alki does as well, so you're welcome to reach out to one or both of us if you want a private, right, customized, response. Here's what I'm going to say generically, and I think this is good for anybody when you're doing your branding on your resume and on your LinkedIn. I want you to think about titles even more than you think about skills. I'm going to give you a formula, a little concept that I have. It's going to sound funny, but it'll make sense in a second. I call it ing versus Ing versus Ing is the skill, is the profession. Everybody had like writing versus writer, event planner, okay? Everybody has a whole bunch of ing skills. Writing, customer service, agile work, project management, pick whatever, right? But the is the profession. That's the title, or I should say the career title that the employer is screening you on. Now, yes, that a particular job posting is going to have a very particular title, but generically, you have some generic career titles. Project manager, scrum master, software engineer, that kind of thing. And we have, of course, permutations, but in general, there's a label, there's a career label that the employer is thinking of for you. And when they are using LinkedIn, which they do a lot, they use the search, not LinkedIn's job board, LinkedIn's search bar in the upper left-hand corner, they'll put in keywords. Software engineer, project manager, agile developer, blah, 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 blah. Marketing executive, I don't know, what they'll put in a phrase. And they're looking for you based on the career title. So you might have a whole bunch of ing skills and projects and things you've done, but if you're just putting those up there, it's confusing. And besides which, you're not going to be found very much. And especially if, and I'm going to use project management as an interesting example, there are a lot of people who have project management skills, but are not project managers, regardless of whether you have a PMP, that's irrelevant. But project management, a lot of people have, they don't necessarily want a project manager job. So when you're thinking about your career brand, that's where I would encourage you to think about. At the highest level, is there an overarching career title that you nicely fit under? And if so, that is what you title your resume with and you title your LinkedIn profile headline with. And then underneath that, oh, I've got all of these ing skills. Now, what that is for you, I don't know. Again, Miralki could probably help you with that, figure it out and narrow it down, especially if you've got a whole bunch of skills that you could be doing. And we help people. Like that's just, it's a normal conversation when you have a lot of capability. How do you figure out that sort of, well, I'll call it the red ribbon, like the thing that hangs everything together? Sometimes it needs to be a little broader, but even so, you need something to hang your branding hat on so that an employer can actually find you. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. And I actually put a product designer on there because it kind of just brings everything together on my resume. But
fabulous. Yeah,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So with that, yep, we're gotta wrap up. But it was wonderful having everybody on this call. And I did put in the chat the link for where you'll find this recording. It's in fact, it's not just this recording, by the way. We started in this call in August of 2020. You can believe. Can't believe it's been almost 4 years. And so we've recorded just about every single one. We used to meet every Friday. Since February, we meet every other Friday, but you've got lots and lots of recordings if you guys want to look at. Okay. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and formally end the call now. For those of you who want to stay on the call, I offer a short prayer call. for encouragement. So you're welcome to stick around for that. Otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing everybody in a couple of weeks. Okay, have a blessed day.